You're listening to Health Professional Radio with Wayne Buckler. My guest today is Oliver Clarke. Oliver's Communications Manager of Olympus Australia. Oliver, welcome to Health Professional Radio.
Thanks, Wayne. Thanks for having me on.
Now, Oliver, Olympus is a brand name that I guess many of us are familiar with. I've certainly got some cameras and stuff. But in the health field, is Olympus such a big brand?
Yeah, so great question, Wayne. We are primarily actually a healthcare company. We do have the digital camera arm to our business, but the major part of our company is dedicated to healthcare, life sciences and industrial. And in the healthcare sector, we're a key innovator and inventor of a number of medical devices primarily related to optics. And we help surgeons and physicians basically visualize the insides of patients through devices like our flexible endoscopes used in colonoscopies and gastroscopies, right through to our surgical camera heads used for, keyhole surgery or laparoscopic surgery.
Now, I guess if you are a surgeon using an endoscope, you may not be aware of the brand name on it. Certainly, it's not a brand that I've heard come up a lot. So, is it a common, I guess my question really is Olympus a major supplier in this space?
Yeah, look, we absolutely are. For the surgeons that do general laparoscopic surgery, gynae surgery, urology, ENT physicians, and especially in the case of gastroenterologists, Olympus would be classified as a household brand name in that regard. Across Australia and New Zealand, we've got a 95% market share in the gastroenterology space, and in the surgical ENT space, we're around sort of about the 30 to 35% mark. What I would say is there are absolutely some surgeons that probably don't know what camera they're holding in their hand. But on the flip side of that coin is the surgeons who absolutely, find it absolutely critical that they have to have a particular brand name scope in their hand. It's very important to them to do that. So right across from the surgeon level through to the nurses, the disinfection staff, the nurse unit managers, all the way up to the hospital executive, Olympus is certainly a supplier in this industry that is well known.
I guess this grows out of the idea of optics as the beginning or the foundation for this?
Yeah, that's right. So Olympus started actually in 1917, so we're about to celebrate our 100th anniversary, which is pretty cool.
Woo, that'll be a big party.
It will. So we'll have to do some celebrations across our branches here in Australia. And we started as a microscopy company, and for around about 30 or 40 years, that's basically what we did. So we did sort of the upright microscopes, as you would see in your traditional school lab or university research institution. And then in the 1950s, there was an R&D engineer who wanted to tackle the issue of the high rate of gastric cancer in the Japanese population. The Japanese, by way of a side story, because of their diet, they do have a higher incidence of gastric cancer than the rest of the population.
Yes.
And so traditionally, at the time in the 50s, if you had gastric cancer and you wanted to, get a view of that disease, you would have to go through an open surgery. Now, open surgeries come with many complications. It's much more of a risk from an infection perspective. They're longer cases and the recovery time is also much greater. So there was an R&D engineer who thought, well, we make these amazing optics for our microscopes. What if we could apply that to some sort of camera that we could insert down the throat to look inside the patient's stomach? And through a number of trial and errors and getting a professional sword swallower on board, they were able to sort of fashion up a stiff garden hose with an analog film-based camera with 6 cells for the images to be captured and a light bulb that could emit a flash 6 times, which was actually quite rare back in the days as well. They actually had to go to a light bulb manufacturer and have a specific flash manufactured for this device. And they were able to successfully test it and prove that they could take the images from the inside of the stomach. And from there, Olympus essentially invented and then pioneered the development of the gastroscope. And that's where really our expertise has come from in the medical field. And we've been able to apply that optic technology from gastroscopies, as I said before, through to our colonoscopes, our ENT scopes, and our surgical camera heads, and all the other areas of medical specialties that we work in.
Now, Oliver, what's the message that you'd like clinicians to take home from our chat today? What's the take-home message for them?
Yeah, look, that's a really good question. I guess I would say to them, look, if they haven't had experience with the Olympus system, and experience the outstanding image quality that they're able to get with the Olympus cameras, I would recommend that they try and do so. Certainly, if they're gastroenterologists, through their training, they would have definitely had an Olympus endoscope in their hands at some point in time. But if they're a surgeon, be it an orthopedic surgeon or a general surgeon doing laparoscopic work, or a gynecologist, they may not have had an Olympus system in their hands. We now boast systems that are able to display outstanding image quality. We have also introduced last year the world's first fully flexible 3D laparoscopic camera for laparoscopic surgery. And the reason why I would encourage them to seek out this technology is the fact that it allows them to save time and perform their procedures far more accurately. So if you can imagine, if you're doing laparoscopic surgery on a 2D screen and you're having to do processes like suture up tissue inside or just grabbing and cutting tissue as well as you're doing the surgery, with that lack of depth perception of the 2D monitor, it can actually be quite difficult to start with, and there's quite a steep learning curve. And I mean, once you understand that, the lack of depth perception, the guys who have been doing it for years can do it pretty well. But we have actually run some studies that have shown that the time saving that you have using a 3D system, which gives you that depth perception, allows you to make those sutures that much faster and allows you to accurately grab that tissue that you're after every single time. So that's really probably the takeaway from an equipment perspective, but more so from an overall corporate perspective. I'd encourage them to find out about more of what Olympus can offer them. So sure, we provide the outstanding equipment and the cameras, but what is sort of behind the box that makes that equipment special? It's the extra services like the on-site support that we give, our education to our doctors and nurses, our accredited training programs that we run in-house at our headquarters here in Melbourne, our field service capabilities that support the products on-site, and also our National Service Centre, which is based here in Melbourne as well, that's able to service most of the equipment and get it back to the customers as soon as possible.
Oliver, that 3D endoscope you're talking about, that's an extraordinary concept for me to get my head around, because I've only just started playing with 3D in the office, and yet to miniaturise that technology and give depth perception is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, it is amazing, and I'll certainly pay my respects to the R&D team at Olympus. They've always pushed the envelope, and Olympus as a company generally pushes more revenue into R&D than a lot of its competitors. To get, and I'm not sure if we want to get too technical, but to get depth perception, it all basically depends on the distance of the two camera sensors that are apart from each other. So if they're really close together, you can't really get depth perception. So the trick is to get a camera sensor that's small enough to fit on the tip of a scope, for one, which is a pretty amazing achievement,
yes.
In my opinion anyway. But then to have two on the end of a tip and to position them in such a way that they can be far enough apart whilst remaining on the end of a 10mm laparoscope to give that depth perception is outstanding. And from my perspective as a tech layman, watching the guys repair these devices in the National Service Centre is just amazing. The circuit boards, the wiring, and the instruments that are used to put these things together is just incredible. And I personally don't understand how they do it.
Well, even brain surgery is simple if you're a brain surgeon, you see. Everything's easy if that's what you do for a living. Oliver, my favourite question, what are the misconceptions in your industry that drive you nuts and keep you awake at night?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. Look, it's probably around value. What value does Olympus provide to its customers? And look, a really good example of that as I was speaking earlier, about our National Service Centre. So if you're running a endoscopy suite and you've got maybe 2 or 3 endoscopy rooms, you might have up to 10 endoscopes in your fleet, and you need those endoscopes to keep the department running day in, day out. Now, through wear and tear, those endoscopes need regular maintenance and servicing, and often they can have parts that are damaged through misuse or mishandling, or wear and tear over the lifespan of that piece of equipment. So when that happens, that needs to come to Olympus to be evaluated and repaired. And the misconception that we generally have is around the value that our repairs offer, and more specifically around the price, because customers can see the repair bill and just go, well, they don't really understand that replacing a certain piece of equipment can be the price that it is. Now, to to help understand that or sort of break through that misconception, what I would say to our customers is to come and have a look at what we need to do to service that scope or that piece of equipment, and have a look at the work that actually goes into making it, to the same quality as it comes out of the factory again. So it might come in, as an example, it might come in with an O-ring that's ruptured or something like that, and it's a pretty quick job to replace a new O-ring. But during that discovery process, they might actually find that there's other components that are either have failed but the customer hasn't noticed, or are about to fail and probably need replacing at that point in time. So our recommendation always is to repair it to its highest possible standard, and that's where the costs come into it from a customer's perspective. What it means for the customer is that they can be sure that that scope is now going to be, the same quality as if it came out of the factory. So you're going to get an extra 1 or 2 or 3 years lifespan out of that piece of equipment again, which is often not picked up by customers if that's not described fully in the quotes that we provide. So that's probably the biggest.
Well, let's hope we've helped dispel a little bit of that misconception today. Oliver, what's the best way for listeners to get in touch with you?
Well, there's a number of different channels. I can be reached through our website. We've got an online form there that they can submit if they want to get in touch with us. They can call our dedicated 1300 number, which is 1300 132 992. We're also on LinkedIn, so if they want to find me on LinkedIn, they can search my name. Or if they want to give me an email, that's absolutely fine as well, oliver.clarke@olympus.com.au.
Now, because I'm always getting in trouble for giving websites and phone numbers without enough warning for people, attention listeners, pencils ready. Oliver, can you give us that website again, please?
So our website is olympusaustralia.com.au.
That's OLYMPUS Australia.com.au. And the phone number?
Is 1300 132 992.
So no complaint letters on Facebook, please. I've been nice and given you fair warning this time. Oliver, thank you for your time this morning. It's been a pleasure having you on. It's fascinating to hear your passion and to hear the passion of the Olympus products come through when you talk about them.
Oh, thank you, Wayne. It's been my absolute pleasure, and I look forward to our customers reaching out to us.
Now, if you've just joined us, you've just missed me talking with Oliver Clarke, the Communications Manager with Olympus Australia. But the good news is there's a transcript on our website at www.hpr.fm. There's also a sound archive of this interview on YouTube, and you can find one on SoundCloud as well. This is Health Professional Radio. My name is Wayne Buckler.